So the next worksheet is number 8. This is going over, so basically everything we went over was the anatomy of the immune system. This is going to be more of the physiology and how it works, and we're going to go step by step. So I hope this doesn't confuse you. So you see this chart thing. I'm going to make it smaller. Chart, right? You know, this diagram is a little more legitimate. Okay, are you going to cooperate? Yeah, so you have this Okay, so, and the first thing I want you to do is I want you to, where's my eraser? Draw a line. See how this splits right here? Draw a line straight through your picture. If you have a pencil, it's probably good too to do that. But just, draw a line through it, because we're going to go over this half, and then we're going to go over this half. This is the T cell half, the cellular mediated half, and this is the cellular, the humoral mediated part of the immune system. So cellular mediated immunity utilizes T cells. Within cellular mediated immunity, the lymphocyte directly contacts the pathogen to destroy it. So this is, and what T cell does this? What T cell directly attacks? Cytotoxic. Yeah, cytotoxic T cells. So there's that. Your humoral immunity, so that is on this side, the T cell portion. On this side is your B cell. So humoral immunity utilizes B cells. In humoral immunity, the lymphocyte, also known as the B cell, does not contact the pathogen to destroy it. Does that make sense? That is the main difference. Like, how are we going to kill this thing? Is what really differentiates their function. Yeah, different ways. Are we going to be like, and I put pictures in too, so that's fun. So this one is like your T cell. It directly stabs it, which is nice. And then your B cell is a little different. This is your B cell. This is the pathogen. And as you can see, those arrows inside of him, those are your antibodies. So there's 2 different methods. This one, to kill it, doesn't directly attack it. Kind of shoots antibodies. But this one is like stabbing. I think those are like pirates or something, so that's pretty neat. So activation of the T cell, fill in the blank. So let's see. So I'm going to have this picture in front of me, and you may be, did I make this double-sided or one? No, shoot. Okay, well, I'm going to give you guys a picture so you can follow along with, and you're not flipping back and forth. But if you need to flip back and forth or need to draw on this, go ahead. Or you have one in front of you. I mean, that's nice too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just so you're not, well, just so, yeah. I just didn't want you to be like flipping back and forth, because I'm going to have this pulled up so you can fill in the blank, but I'm going to be talking from the picture. So we're going to be looking at the right side of that line you drew that goes kind of straight through. And it's going to go, this is the process, okay? There's, this is labeled 1, 2, 3, 4. This is also labeled on the side 2, 3, 4. So step 2 is happening at the same time. Step 3 is happening at the same time, and step 4 is happening at the same time. Does that make sense? So it kind of goes down, but I tried doing it another way, but I think this one worked out better. So step number 1, you can see this is your macrophage. This like clearish kind of thing, that's your macrophage. Do you see those little, let's go here. You see those little circles inside of it? That is it destroying. So what happens is your macrophage, I need like a pointer. Your macrophage, which is this guy, engulfs, it eats the antigen-bearing agent. The antigen-bearing agent, just think about that as being your Pac-Man ghost. Your macrophage is then going to digest it with lysosomes. Oh, no, phagolysosomes is going to dissolve it. These little, like, circular things in the picture is then going to go to the surface, kind of like how I drew that Pac-Man up here, right? The antigen-presenting cell ate that little ghost. The little ghost kind of was like dissolved and his fragments were spread. That's what's happening right there. And then the antigen presenting cell is going to present the antigen that was on the surface of the pathogen. So that's what that is showing right there, is that picture. Next we have so for the first blank, a macrophage engulfs the pathogen, step 1. Step 2, so you can write this in. A macrophage displays what does a macrophage display? The antigen on its surface. Thus, the macrophage becomes an antigen presenting cell. So going on the left side or the right side, we're going to see the other part of step 2, right? We're going to go over here to this one. The T cell utilizes the antigen from the antigen presenting cell to detect the threat. This is true. Does that make sense? So we're going to kind of start here and then move over. It is, but yeah, I mean, but I didn't, because I had it but the way I had it, I mean, it happens at the same time. So it looked like it was step by step, but I was like, I don't know. So yeah, that's what happens during the second stage, is those two things. Next, so we had that happen. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Right, okay, so that was step 2. So this is your cytotoxic T cell, and this is your helper T cell, okay? And that's why there's 2 steps. So step number 3 on this side is talking about the helper T cell. This is talking about the cytotoxic T cell. So that's why we have 2 steps. So the first portion is a helper T cell detects the antigen. That is right here. It's detecting it. It attaches right there. It's detecting. This is your helper T. When a helper T cell detects the danger, it will proliferate. So proliferation means it splits, it divides into 2 more helper T cells. That's nice. It splits. You know, it's increasing recruits. That's step 3. Yeah, after it attaches and detects. Yeah. Hey, I need some help. Yeah, for sure. At the same time, on the other side of your worksheet, a cytotoxic T cell, so right now that's what we just went over, was a helper T cell detects the antigen. When a helper T cell detects the danger, it will proliferate into 2 more helper T cells. At the same time, a cytotoxic T cell will detect the same antigen on the antigen presenting cell. Do you want me to go back to T cell? Okay. So that's your cytotoxic T cell. Cytotoxic T cell is inactive. It's not activated yet. It detects it. It's inactive. It's hanging out, and it's like, okay. You know, it's kind of like on standby. It's kind of like, okay, I'm here. The cytotoxic T cell will then wait to be activated. So in your picture, you guys got that written down? So in your picture, right here, you have your helper T cell proliferating. We have it splitting. And then you have your cytotoxic T cell. There's this arrow. This arrow represents it waiting. It's waiting to be activated. For step 4, we're going to write these helper T cells. So these helper T cells right here, this one that got proliferated, it will then release interleukin. That's what it's showing right here. That's step 4. The T cell will release interleukin. The interleukin will then come in contact with the cytotoxic T cell. That's what's happening right here. So it goes helper T cell, cytotoxic, helper T, cytotoxic. So if you can read the description, activated helper T cell interacts with cytotoxic T cell, which is combined with the identical antigen. Helper T cell will then release interleukin-2. That's what these purple things are. And interleukin-2 is like the message. Interleukin-2 is like, so I talk to you and I say, hey, activate. Your helper T cell says, activate with interleukin-2. Interleukin-2 then attaches to your cytotoxic T cell. Next portion on step 4 on the other side. We're going to go here. So yeah, helper T cell will then release interleukin-2 when it comes in contact with cytotoxic T. Crap, come on. That's that. On the other side, so step 4 over here, cytotoxic T cell will receive interleukin-2 from the helper T. Cytotoxic T cell is now activated. This is true. And then step 5, which is under that, cytotoxic T will then proliferate and specialize into memory T cells and more cytotoxic T cells. So if you look at your picture, you can see, let's see. If we look at the picture, you can see step 5, it says 6 up here, but your cytotoxic T cell will then proliferate and differentiate into memory T and cytotoxic T. Does that make sense? The left?
Side. Correct.
What'd you put for left? Yeah. So this is like, on the left side is like what your T cells do. On the right side is what your cytotoxic T cells do. Sorry. Left side is your helper T cell on the sheet. Right side is cytotoxic T cell. So it kind of, but it happens at the same time. You know, it's kind of back and forth. Does this format make sense? Or would it be? It does? Okay. As long as you got the message, right? So the main outcome, and this is what makes it cellular mediated. See how this guy is stabbing this one? This one that's getting stabbed is the pathogen. This is your cytotoxic T cell. This is your doctor poison that we spoke about. Cytotoxic T cells will directly contact, he's directly stabbing him, will directly contact other pathogens and destroy pathogens with displayed antigens. I didn't get antigens in that. Does that kind of clear up what cytotoxic? Yeah, okay. I don't like having to flip back and forth. I like seeing both. So next we're going to go to, we drew a line. Our line was drawn right here, straight down. So this portion was the cell-mediated immune response, and this is the humoral mediated immune response. So we're going to get to this side of the picture now. So, step 1, a macrophage engulfs the pathogen. Right? Our macrophage needs to engulf that pathogen. Macrophage displays the antigen on its surface and thus becomes an antigen-presenting cell. Neat, right? However, while the macrophage is doing that, at the same time, in step 2, the B cell utilizes the antigen, so this statement says, the B cell utilizes the antigen. This is false. Your B cell does not utilize that antigen. And you can see it in that picture. So even though your macrophage, however, you need that macrophage. So the outcome of this is your helper T cell will also activate your B cell. So you need that macrophage in the picture. However, if you look at this part of it, so this was happening, the macrophage engulfing it, the B cell directly contacts the pathogen at the very beginning. It doesn't destroy it. It kind of like touches it and is like, "Ooh, I'm not touching you." So that's kind of how your B cell is. So your B cell doesn't depend on the macrophage. Your T cells do. B cells don't really depend on the macrophage to work. Okay? So on your left side, step 3, a helper T cell detects the antigen, right? Because we're talking about the antigen presenting cell. Okay? Helper T cell detects the antigen. When a helper T cell detects the danger, it will proliferate into 2 more helper T cells, just like the beginning, right? The first one we did. Just like the cytotoxic T cells, so on the right, so that happened on the left side. It goes from left to right. On the right side of step 3, the B cell combines with the same antigen within the body. It doesn't utilize an antigen presenting cell, but it still combines. B cell is inactive but aware. It's kind of waiting around. It's aware of the threat. B cell will then wait around to be activated. So just like when we looked at the arrow in the picture. Oh wait, did you get that? I'm sorry. You got it? Okay. If you looked at that picture, right, for their cytotoxic, this arrow represented it waiting. Same thing with the B cell. This B cell, this arrow right here, represents it waiting. It's waiting to be activated. And as you can see, this is happening this is like the timeline of how it happens. So this is happening at the same time. So let's see. Step number 4, these helper T cells, so the ones that proliferated, will then secrete cytokines. So over here, we originally were secreting interleukin. We're now going to secrete cytokines. So these helper T cells will then release cytokines when it comes in contact with the B cell. If you look at your picture, step number 4, the B cell will then receive cytokines from the helper T. The B cell will now become active. So there's a trend. You need your helper T cell, the one in the middle that's splitting, for anything to happen. So T cell will release cytokines. Cytokines will come in contact with B cell. B cell will receive cytokines. B cell will be activated.
Can you scroll out?
Out? Yeah. Is it too much in?
Sure.
Does that help? I think you're on. Go to the next page. It's kind of the same process on the left side for both of them.
Okay.
Are you okay? Okay.
I need to go back. I'll just look at
We can go back if you want.
just make sure I got it right.
Okay. So you want to go? Can you see that? Okay. Okay. I probably should have said the left side was helper T cell and the other side was either the T or the B. Cytotoxic. So yeah, so if you compare them basically, on the left side, this is what your T cells do. On the right side of your paper for each of these, this one we're talking about cytotoxic T cells, now we're talking about the B cells. So this is the same process. That's why I split it up, was like, this is how it happens. So, so B cell, does that make sense? Okay, so right now, I know the scrolling is kind of confusing too. So this happened at the same time. Helper T cell proliferated. This helper T cell right now are secreting cytokine. Cytokine then is received by the B cell, and the B cell still has an antigen on it, but it's not attacking it. So that's that. B cell will receive the cytokine from helper T. The B cell will now be activated. So that's what this arrow indicates. So step number 5, B cell will then proliferate and specialize. You don't have this on the sheet, I don't have it, but if you see on your sheet, right here, you see a little, see that little box? I kind of covered it up. But the little box indicates that, shows that your B cell is dividing into memory T, or memory B, and plasma B cells. So it's going to divide, and then what'll happen is, so this lady right here, that's your B cell. This guy right here is your pathogen, and these arrows sticking out of him are your antibodies. So that's how your B cell kills things. Plasma B, and it's mainly your plasma B cells, because your memory B don't do too much. Plasma B cells will produce antibodies. Antibodies will then circulate in the body throughout the blood and bind to antigens and destroy the pathogens that way with antigens. Mm-hmm. Arrows are the antibodies.
The person that got shot is the antigen.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is the
Plasma B cell, yep. Do you guys want to run through this picture a second time, like exactly what I went over, except for now that you have the steps written, you can kind of know what's coming?
Yeah.
Go over a second time? Okay. So starting from the top, okay, draw a line right through the middle, like you guys did. This side is your T cells, your cellular mediated immunity. This is your B cell, humoral mediated immunity. This first sheet, I'm going to go over T cells, cellular mediated immunity. It's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. These steps are your helper T cells. These steps are your cytotoxic T cells, except for these happen at the same time. That's where they're labeled. Step 3 and 3 happens at the same time, if that kind of helps it show. The main point of cellular mediated is your cytotoxic T cell, which is this gentleman right here, is stabbing your pathogen. It's coming in direct contact. So that's the outcome. So we're going to start with what happens with your helper T cell. A macrophage engulfs the pathogen. Macrophage displays the antigen on its surface, becoming an antigen-presenting cell. I'm going to scroll back up. If you guys have your steps in front of you, I'll just have the picture up and stop scrolling. But this is your macrophage, step 1. Macrophage will display the antigens on its surface and thus becomes an antigen-presenting cell. So this is your antigen-presenting cell right here, your macrophage. On the right side, it's saying the T cell utilizes antigens from the antigen-presenting cell to detect the threat. This is true. You can see your T cells attaching to the antigen-presenting cell. Your B cells don't do that, but your T cells do, right? A T cell, so step 3 on the left side, a helper T cell detects the antigen. When a helper T cell detects the antigen, it will proliferate into 2 more helper T cells. So see, it'll proliferate, but right now we're just going to focus on this side. This side we're going to forget about for a while. At the same time, as your helper T cell attaches, in step 3, your cytotoxic T cell will then attach to the antigen on the antigen-presenting cell. Your cytotoxic T cell is inactive, but it's aware. It's aware of the threat. It's like, hey, yeah, there is something here. However, it will then wait. That's what this arrow represents. It'll wait to be activated. Okay? Step 4. So we're here with our T cell, and we're here with our cytotoxic T cell, our helper T cell and our cytotoxic. these helper T cells, so the ones that were proliferated, will then release interleukin. Interleukin will then come in contact with the cytotoxic T cell. Cytotoxic T cell will receive interleukin from helper T. Cytotoxic T cell will now become active. Last step, step number 5. Cytotoxic T cell will then proliferate and differentiate into memory T cells and cytotoxic T cells. And then those memory T cells later on down the line are like they're in training, but they'll eventually turn back into cytotoxic T cells. But yeah, pretty neat. So the outcome, when we look at the bottom again, here's our cellular mediated response. Cytotoxic T cells will directly contact other pathogens and destroy pathogens with the displayed antigens. So that is the method of killing. Are these snipers or soldiers, I guess? And the cytotoxic T cells are most definitely your soldiers. Or your archers, or your humoral. So now that you have the steps written down and in front of you, I'm just going to focus on the picture. Let's go in a little bit more. So right now, you flip to the other side with the woman shooting the man. And originally in the picture, I had a picture of a gun, but then I was like, I don't know. You don't know about that. So I'm like, I'm just going to put a cartoon archer. And yeah, I don't know if that'll, instigating thoughts or something. I don't know, what the heck. Anyway, so step number 1, a macrophage will engulf the pathogen. First step, right? A macrophage will then display the antigen on its surface, thus becoming an antigen-presenting cell. At the same time, you got your B cells over here. So number 2, is that true and false at the same time right there? A B cell utilizes the antigen from the antigen-presenting cell to detect the threat. That is false. As you can see, your T cells are touching the antigen-presenting cell. Your B cell kind of touches the antigen, and they're like, ooh, I'm going to kill you. That's kind of the attitude with your B cells. So there's...
So what would make that statement true that B cells utilize the wrong?
Don't utilize. Don't utilize.
I mean,
Yeah.
how does it?
B cells combine, well right here it says B cells combine with the antigen. So they kind of latch on. They latch, but they don't use the antigen presenting cell to detect the threat. Yeah, they do it independently, yeah. So you could take out the whole sentence, utilizes the antigen from antigen presenting cell. You could take that whole sentence out and say the B cell independently detects the threat. Just take out that kind of whole sentence, and that's what will make it clear. And this is what kind of confuses people with it, is because it's like, but it's not cellular mediated. But the way the immunity is how it kills it. The method of killing is what defines if it's humoral or if it's cytotoxic. So that is that. So step number 3, we're going to talk about the helper T cell, because we can't have how it goes helper T cell, B cell, helper T cell, cytotoxic. Your helper T cell is the commander. A helper T cell, step 3 on the left side, a helper T cell detects the antigen. When the helper T cell detects the danger, it will proliferate into 2 more helper T cells. That's what it shows right here. It attaches and detects, and then it proliferates. Except for we're going to focus on this side. So same thing on the other side. While this T cell is proliferating, the B cell combines with the same antigen within the body. That's what step 3 says, I think. Wait, I don't even know if I worded that right. The B cell combines with the same antigen within the body. The B cell is inactive but aware of the threat, and it will wait to be activated. So scrolling back up. See, it's the same thing in the body. This thing is this thing right here. Same thing. But it's just going to wait. And it's going to wait. And then see how it's still kind of touching. You know, it's kind of bound, but it's still like, I'm not going to kill you. Yeah, it's not engulfed. It's not anything. So it's aware, but it'll wait to be activated. Going down to step 4. And then we're going to go right across again. These helper T cells, so by these, it's talking about this one, will release cytokines when it comes in contact with the B cell. When it sees the B cell, it's going to be like, cytokines. Be like, kill that thing. Kill whatever's attached to you. It is not a friend. The B cell will receive these cytokines from the helper T cell, and the B cell is now active. That's true. The B cell, in your picture, you have it here. But the activated B cell, see how the cytotoxic also splits? Your B cell will also split into memory B cells and plasma B cells. So the outcome, plasma B cells will produce antibodies that will circulate in the body and bind to antigens, destroying the pathogens. Does that make sense? So in the picture, so we go down to our outcome. Plasma B cell, this is your plasma B cells, this girl. This man is your pathogen, and the arrows are the antibodies. So you can see here, the arrows are what kills him. She doesn't kill him directly, her arrows do. Does that make sense? Did it help to run through the second time?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just go to the worksheet and make sure I have each.
For this page?
Yeah, so that one.
Can you see all that font okay? Okay. Maybe I can zoom in a little. Scroll up to the next one. Yep. The cellular mediated. There we go. I originally had this as like a graph with like what happened on each side, and it was terrible. So I was like, I'm going to write this out. I could make a graph of it though, just for the sake of it. Okay. All right. Any questions on this?
So page 2 is humoral.
Page, yes,
Humoral.
this one? No, this is cytotoxic.
That's right.
It's directly killing. You're fine. But the one with the girl and the guy with the arrows in him, that's humoral. All right. Okay. You all right?
Sure.
All right. You look like you're in pain.